Donald Trump sent a letter to NATO. I'm going to read this letter because the letter is pretty astonishing. I firmly place this in the category of a bluff. Of a bluff. I am sick of you asking daddy, me, for ice cream. Stop asking me for ice cream. Stop asking me for ding dongs and ho-hos. I know you want a pony. I'm tired of you asking me for a pony. If you want a pony, then I need you to do X and Y, Z. This is the message that Trump sent, or the letter that Donald Trump sent to Europe. And I'm going to read this out. A letter sent by President Donald Trump to all NATO nations, and by the way, not just Europe, NATO nations, meaning Istanbul, Turkey included, to all NATO nations and the world. I am ready to do major sanctions on Russia when all NATO nations have agreed and started to do the same thing. And when NATO nations stop buying oil from Russia, as you know, NATO's commitment to win has been far less than 100%, and the purchase of Russian oil by some has been shocking. It's been shocking. It shocked me. Shocked the conscience. It's greatly weakening your negotiating position and bargaining power over Russia. Anyway, I'm ready to, quote, go, unquote, when you are. Just say when. I believe that this plus NATO as a group placing 50 to 100% tariffs on China will be fully withdrawn after the war with Russia and Ukraine is ended. Will also be great help in ending this deadly but ridiculous war. China has a strong control, even a grip over Russia, and these powerful tariffs will break that grip. This is not Trump's war. It would never have started if I was president. It is Biden and Zelensky's war. I am only here to stop it and save thousands of Russian and Ukrainian lives. 7,118 lives lost last week alone. Crazy! If NATO does as I say, the war will end quickly and all of those lives will be saved. If not, you are just wasting my time, my energy, and money of the United States. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. He has effectively told NATO, look, I'm sick of you begging me to get further involved. I'm tired of it. I will get involved. I'm ready to go when you are ready to go. And by go, stop using Russian oil and gas products. And on top of stop using Russian oil and gas, I would imagine this is also from Saudi Arabia. This is also from India, anywhere where oil is being piped around. And if you do that, then I'm ready to go and get involved. And then to make the point of saying, this is Zelensky's war. This is Joe Biden's war. I had nothing to do with this. It's just amazing. I want to bring in my guest, my man, Mark Sleboda, International Relations Security Analyst. You can find Marco and Boosty at Real Politic with Mark Sleboda, or just put in his name, Mark Sleboda, and he will appear. Mark, how you doing today, man? You doing okay?
I'm alive, Jamaro. Thanks for having me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the show.
Well, Mark, it's always an honor and a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining me. I was reading Trump's quote-unquote ultimatum to the audience. I do want to get your take on that. In fact, let me play this video first. This is Donald Trump reiterating what was in that letter. I'm pretty sure you read it. I just read it to the audience, so I don't need to necessarily rehash. But effectively, look, I will go after Russia with sanctions if you are willing to stop using all Russian oil and gas, even I would imagine from third parties like India, Saudi Arabia, or wherever else. And if you put 100% sanctions on China, then I will be willing to get involved and I will be willing to do this. Otherwise, you're wasting my time. You're wasting the money of America. You're wasting my energy. Leave daddy alone. So this is Trump being asked about this on the tarmac somewhere.
Has to get together. Europe has to get together and do it. Look, Europe they're my friends, but they're buying oil from Russia. So we can't be expected to be the only ones that are full bore. But Europe is buying oil from Russia. I don't want them to buy oil. And the sanctions that they're putting on are not tough enough. And I'm willing to do sanctions, but they're going to have to toughen up their sanctions commensurate with what I'm doing. Just to clarify, you want to move ahead. Has to get together.
So,
Europe has
Mark, give me your take on that. I mean, it comes across as if Daddy is tired of Europe asking for a pony. Give me your take. Give me your take first.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that Trump is maneuvering himself out of a hole that he dug himself into several months ago when he made threats of launching 100% tariffs, sanctions, effectively, through in the form of 100% tariffs on goods from China and India, because China and India refused to stop buying Russian energy, in particular oil. And since then, he has come under an enormous amount of pressure to follow through on his threats, because Russia obviously has not ended the special military operation on on American terms, right? Which is what the intention of those bluffs, those threats was. But somewhere along the line, someone with some, I guess, a fraction of actual economic knowledge within his administration pointed out to him that if he did that, it would crash the global economy. Americans would be paying through the roof for gasoline. Inflation would go sky high. Everyone in the world would be facing that, but Americans would not be immune to it. And already looking ahead to midterm elections and the like, I guess Trump decided that maybe that wasn't such a good idea after all. But he has come under enormous pressure, both from within the U.S. and I would venture even within his own administration, from bipartisan Congress, from the deep state, from everyone really, to follow through. And he has come, that is accompanied by enormous pressure from the U.S.'s European vassals. The tail wagging the dog on this particular issue. Right. And he seems to have struck on a largely, rhetorical, semantic, but logic to avoid following through on this, on his previous threats. And that is that, well, if we're going to do it, the Europeans should do it as well. Of course, they can't do it because their economy's already falling apart, already desperate. They can't survive being cut off of what is effectively laundered Russian oil through India and Turkey. Because they're already paying a significant markup over what they were. And those higher energy costs are deindustrializing Germany and sending costs and deficits soaring throughout much of the EU. The Europeans still run, unlike the United States, export economies for the most part, right? Particularly Germany and others, where and the biggest source of or the biggest destination of many of their exports is to China, right? Mm-hmm. And they know very well that if they put as China has promised, that if they install 100% tariffs on China, China will do right back to them what it did to the U.S. and say tit tat, tit tat, tit tat, and that's it. And the Chinese, the European economies would collapse completely. I think I've described it before. It's not so much it would be a nail in the coffin. It would be kicking that the coffin's already in the ground, sealed up, and it would just be kicking the dirt in on the coffin, from above. So they can't. They obviously they can't do this. There are some people who have suggested that they're that fanatical. And I do believe that Merz and Starmer and Macron, who seem to have no regard for their own country citizens, for their own domestic economic and political situation, and are utterly obsessed with the conflict with Russia in the proxy conflict with Russia and Ukraine. They might very well try to scheme of a way where they can follow through on this, but I don't think they're going to. I mean, we just heard 2 weeks ago from French and British ministers that they might have to consider bailout loans from the IMF because they're facing financial collapse, and that it would be before this. So Trump seemed to have struck on what is a largely rhetorical but logical device to disarm both the Europeans and the forces, the dogs of war against Russia in the United States, principally Lindsey Graham and Blumenthal in the Senate, but not only. Of course, those are just the most obvious ones, and they've already attempted a workaround of this. They tried to sneak their version of bone-crushing tariff sanctions against China and India into a government spending package, but evidently the House Speaker is not having any of it thus far, so it doesn't seem like that ploy will work. But it's not the end of the story. I mean, there will be further maneuvering, but in the eyes of the public, shall we say, right? Both the U.S. and the European publics, but primarily the American. Trump seems to have a fairly strong, logical, rhetorical argument about why he can't. If the Europeans won't do it, why should we? And that plays to his, supposed Israel first. No, I'm sorry, America first agenda in this case. It serves as an ability to deflect. And again, he's deflecting a trap that he himself walked into by making this threat, this bluff against Russia months ago. But Russia didn't move, China didn't move, India didn't move, Turkey and Hungary and Slovakia didn't even think about moving. That has led us, to this situation. And the Europeans are just outraged. I mean, to be fair, that letter that Donald Trump sent, at least, I mean, I don't know what it looks like on paper, but the way it looks like on social media was the usual Trump style and screaming capital letters and bluntness. Yep. Don't waste my time. I mean, that is a biatch slap in the face to the Europeans. There's no way, to regard it any other way. And it certainly, I mean, probably caused the despondent Zelensky to, dip into whatever morale supplies he still has in the Mason cabinet, because it's a pretty strong political position, I think, for Trump. Again, that he is digging himself out of right now, but it's not the end of the story. And it has to be said, the Europeans are also equally outraged about the lack of Trump's response to the latest Ukrainian false flag with duct taped drones being dropped in Poland.
Yep. I was going to get to that too, because that's Trump he just shrugged. He just shrugged.
It could have been a mistake, and that was it. And that's it. I mean, it's hard to argue. I mean, okay, so let's say that they were actual Russian drones flown by Russia intentionally in the Polish airspace. They were all fiberglass decoys without any explosives, which the Polish government has freely admitted. And the Polish government was told they were coming by Belarus, which was almost certainly acting on behalf of Russia, warning that it detected that they were about to enter Polish territory. And they still absolutely struggled with all of NATO's jets and air defense to bring down 4 slow-moving, unarmed fiberglass and plywood drones, which has led since then to a sudden cold bath, the Western media has suddenly realized that they are completely vulnerable to Russian drones. Something they
Even
should
dummy
have
drones.
realized. Well, yeah, or any drones for that matter. Yeah, you're right. I mean, non-state actors could use drones, right? The same game that the Kiev regime pulled by in Operation Spiderweb with a cargo truck full of drones, right? That could be launched anywhere in the United States, which receives more cargo containers, and it doesn't even have to be by a state actor, right? It could be by terrorists, right? Genuine terrorists, not make believe. I'm going to call everyone I don't like terrorists, like the U.S. usually does. That it could be done by just about anyone. We're seeing the proliferation of not a weapon of mass destruction, but of a conventional military technology that can have dramatic results, in any country in the world, including the United States. And let's face it, that there are very few countries in the world that have adequate air defense, right now, against such kinds of threats. Russia has demonstrated that it largely does, and it probably has the best air defense and electronic warfare in the world. Israel was found wanting in the last few months, despite help from the US and the UK and France and Saudi Arabia and everyone else. Other countries, European countries, the US homeland, are incredibly more vulnerable. So the fact that the US refused to, that Trump refused to react to this quite obvious, deliberate provocation to draw NATO and the US, further in or further back into the Ukraine conflict was, just ignored by him. And I mean, the Europeans and the neocons in the U.S., and when I say neocons, it's a general bipartisan term because bipartisan consensus. In fact, these are two such refutations of, attempts to escalate against Russia that I have to worry about Trump, right? Because these are significant.
Yeah. So does this give you a rethink that Trump may not want to get sucked in further into this conflict?
I've never said that Trump wanted to get in further. I said it really doesn't matter at the end of the day because the deep state, the institutions of the U.S. government are what ultimately decide things. And like I said, this game is not over. Wait until some Jeffrey Epstein videos of Trump doing something appear, and then suddenly you'll see Trump very interested. I'm providing a potential example. What I'm saying is that the deep state, right, the permanent bureaucracy, the blob, does not play fair when their geopolitical foreign policy orthodoxy of hegemony is not followed through by the figureheads that be. Trump appears at the moment to be in a strong political position. Now, I don't ultimately believe that this is due for any love for Russia or any rejection of U.S. hegemony or its machinations. It's simply that Trump walked himself into a dangerous economic trap, and he does, I believe, think about the economy, at least in the terms that he is capable of thinking about it, which I'm not always sure are very good terms. But he did not want to oppose. He just lost quietly while claiming victory, lost a trade war with China. He can't walk back into another one, right? It'd be cut off have the U.S. companies cut off from rare earths, from magnets, U.S. military cut off from it, right? High-tech magnets needed for, all kinds of modern high-end electronics and military gear. The big tech was sounding the alarm in the United States, right? That they were going to be in serious problems. So he's again reaching for arrows in the quiver, and the quiver is empty. So that is a legacy that was handed down to him by the Biden administration, and he has been dancing and maneuvering ever since then. He still, of course, wants to end the conflict in Ukraine on American terms, but he has no leverage to do so, right? And he's been maneuvering ever since. And again, he keeps walking himself into this trap where he makes threats against Russia that he can't back up. I mean, Putin agreeing to go to Alaska and meet him, where Putin had earlier been putting off the idea of meeting Trump directly before there's any kind of settlement of the Ukraine issue, or at least of bilateral relations, nothing significant, in the détente area accomplished. Putin refused, and suddenly he agreed. Why? To help Trump get out of the rhetorical trap that he had walked into by making threats, on China and India, to go after Russia that he couldn't back up. So that allowed him some time. And he has used that time well, because now they've come up with this threat against, that Europe has to do it first. Then we'll be glad to do it, and knowing full well that they can't do it. But it's something that they have obviously stumbled upon latter day. They could have made this argument earlier. They didn't. They've stumbled upon it now. I'm glad they have, in the sense of not wanting to see escalation of the conflict in Ukraine, but pretty sure it's going to happen at some point. It's just, I think Trump has stumbled upon another reprieve in this situation. But again, I don't think this is the end of the story. It's just the end of a chapter.
Yeah, he found a way to extricate himself out of a fix.
Temporarily.
Temporarily. Do you, if you do agree that Putin found a way to assist Trump in pulling himself out of a fix in Alaska?
Yes.
Donald Trump found a way to,
because nothing else was accomplished there. So.
Okay. Yes. Okay. What